by that. And I'm talking about the Victorian governess because I have to write a research paper on it in a different class. So the Victorian governess was a staple of 18th century life. It was often, they were like people in high-class households that taught the kids in those households because the women of the household were too good to be teaching their own kids. And so they would live in the house and they would like be like a pseudo parent and teacher to the kids. So, what is it? They're women of higher breeding, as in they were women that would have been like ladies in the upper class, but they didn't have the financial means to be ladies, and so they had to find some way to make money. And so being a governess and being a teacher in a like proper household was considered a gentle occupation. So it was the like nice, calm, proper way to respectably make money, as opposed to working in a factory or working a regular, normal job. They lived in the household with the people they were teaching as like a pseudo-servant. So according to Catherine Hughes, who is the leading historian in the topic of governesses, if you Google her, like 9 out of 10 articles written about governesses were written by her. She talks about the odd place that governesses get put, because they're not servants, they're a higher status than that, but they're not part of the household, they work for the household. So they get this really uncomfortable middle ground where they are there, but they're better than the servants, so they don't talk to them. But they're not good enough to be with the family, so they have this awful, like, lonely existence. In the anthology of essays, Suffer and Be Still, written by Martha Vinnicus, she discusses that there was an article written in the, like, a newspaper published in the 1850s about how people were so sick of hearing about the distressed and upset governesses because they were such a topic. But in their sadness and depression, they taught etiquette and education to the children of the household. So there was a lot of don't curtsy too low, and chew with your mouth closed, and this is French, and this is piano, and learn stuff. But unless they did what Jane Eyre did in Charlotte Bronte's Jane Eyre, and married the master of the household, they don't usually end up doing anything because they're teaching all the time, so they don't have time to fall in love and do all that fun stuff. So they always turn into eventual spinsters. There was actually a foundation put in place to aid aging governesses, because once they got old enough, they were no longer considered attractive prospects for the job, and so they were kind of destitute at that point because no one wanted them. But some cases, they did get the fun Jane Eyre experience. In Jane Eyre, she writes, "Reader, I married him," because she ends up with the dude. But governesses were a huge topic in literature in the Victorian age. Victorian age being the time of Queen Victoria, so roughly 1830s to 1880s-ish. But in that time, about 140 novels were written about governesses in places, including Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte, Agnes Grey by Charlotte's sister Anne, and Vanity Fair by William Thackeray. And all of these have governesses as the main plot points. In Jane Eyre, it's a very happy, fun love story. Like, oh my goodness, I found this guy, I'm so happy, let's get married. In the one written by Anne, Charlotte's sister, Charlotte and Anne both being governesses themselves, mind you. Agnes is very, very sad all the time. She is the destitute. But governesses were a thing because the Industrial Revolution happened, and so lots of people of the relatively lower class got money all of a sudden, and so to become like pseudo-aristocrats. They took the idea of the upper class and they took the ideas of the upper class, which is not raising their own kids, and instead hired people to raise their kids, being governesses. Sarah Ellis, the leader of like the proper way to live life in the 1830s and 40s, writes that gentlemen may employ their hours of business in almost any degrading occupation, and if they but have the means of supporting a respectable establishment at home, may be gentlemen still. While if a lady but touch any article, no matter how delicate, in the way of trade, she loses caste and ceases to be a lady. So, to not cease to be a lady, they became governesses because they're not working with trade.